На трибунах аллеют знамена, облака в поднебесье плывут. На зеленом ковре стадиона разноцветные майки цветут.
Hello and welcome back to the Russian Football News Podcast. It's just myself and David this week as we get together to discuss the midweek European games, cover last weekend's RPL, and go more in depth on the recent Russia squad as Valery Karpin has trimmed down his 41-man squad now to a 30-man squad. But first we will explore the European matches, and we're going to do it a little bit differently this week. Instead of 15 to 20 minutes on each game, we're going to more concisely approach the matches, partly because it was a little bit of a disappointing one in terms of results. All three faced hard away games. First of all, Zenit travelled to Turin and they lost 4-2 at Juventus, largely thanks to a Paulo Dybala masterclass and some potentially suspect refereeing, which we will get into later on. Lokomotiv also faced a hard away game against the group leaders Galatasary and earned a 1-1 draw. It wasn't the greatest of performances from Loco, but it was the second half Francois Camano goal that levelled it up. And Spartak travelled to England to face Leicester City in a far more convincing and better performance than what happened 2 weeks ago. Rui Vitória took Nikola Raskasov out of the firing line, and went ultra defensive as Spartak earned the draw from that excellent performance. But David, if we do start with Zenit very quickly, it seems that, in my opinion, despite Zenit obviously scoring 2 goals in Turin, which is no mean feat, I think this is just largely a game where Juve and in particular Paulo Dybala's class really shone on the night, and I don't think that contentious penalty decision would have really made much of an impact had it not have gone the way that it did.
It's a tough one. Obviously, the home fixture was very good from Zenit's perspective. They really fought well and were, I thought, unlucky to come away with no points. They deserved a point in the fixture in St. Petersburg. But this one, from what I've seen, I couldn't see the game unfortunately, but I've seen the highlights, and the key point I think probably is the penalty, because that leads on to something else later. Obviously, it's a very soft penalty. I remember seeing it on Twitter later that evening, thinking, "Oh, that's soft." And then I hadn't even heard about at that point the contention around apparently there was some encroachment or something. I haven't even seen the clip of that. I assume the penalty was retaken after that.
Yeah.
So it was a soft penalty, but then for Juventus's 4th goal, so the game was obviously at that point 3-1 for the penalty, or was it to take?
The penalty made it 2-1.
2-1. For what I think was the 4th goal, I'm pretty sure it was Krylia. Juve countered, and the ball gets switched off towards the Zenit left. And Krylia either slips or tries inexplicably to chest it and slips while doing so. And basically just let the Juve player free on goal. And I just think that Zenit were pushing harder for that, and that goal probably could have been avoided had the gap not been quite as big. You know, if that game, because the penalty was the penalty before half time? No.
It's in the second half. Early second half.
It was early second half. See, early second half is a killer blow, because you want to try and keep that game at level pegging as long as you can in the early second half. Stop it getting away from you, but conceding early, letting Juve take control again, just basically ruins any game plan that you presumably had been given at half time. So yeah, disappointing, but it's an incredibly tough place to go, and no goals that I thought were unbelievably good. The first one was just he just picked up a loose corner, and then it was Zenit's goals weren't exactly the best themselves, especially the first one. Incredibly fortunate, but they gave it their best shot. 2 goals in Turin is nothing to be ashamed of, and they potentially got a little unlucky. But we've said it for a little while. I think I said it last time I was on. That for Zenit it's 3rd or nothing at this point. Malmo lost again, so all Zenit have got to do is beat Malmo away, or just not lose to Malmo, even draw against Malmo, and they'll be sorted. They'll be through.
Yeah.
So that's the big focus. Go to Sweden and don't lose is what they need to be doing. So any other games at this point are a bonus.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think what I mean, obviously the penalty did have a big bearing on the matters at the time. Zenit had like you said, fortunate goal, but they were well worth the then point at half time. Going into half time, I thought they performed better in the first half. Unfortunately, that did change the game. But what I mean by I don't think it would have had much of a bearing is, regardless of if that's given or not, the quality that Juve have up top with Chiesa and Dybala in particular in the form that they were in. Chiesa, goal and assist, Dybala, 2 goals and an assist. That I'm not quite sure what... I think it was just an inevitability that Juve were going to come and win the match just with the way that it was going. And then Zenit only really got in the ascendancy whatsoever late on, when Juve just sat back 4-1 up and just kind of took the foot off the gas entirely. But I don't think that by any means this was like last season. Last season it was a meek performance from Zenit in the Champions League in general. Even though they've conceded 4 goals and they've lost away to Juve, by no means did they just concede and just stand down. It's a performance that you can be proud of the team for, especially playing a team with the quality that Juve have got, even though they've not been in the greatest of form this season, especially in terms of the domestic form. Domestically, they're struggling quite a bit. But there is a gulf. And like I say, it's unfortunate that the game turned on that penalty because it was never a pen. Claudinho was robbed. It was the lightest of touch, if anything. The retake was, in my opinion, fine. There were players encroaching. By the letter of the law, a retake is the correct thing to do. The only problem with that is the inconsistency of refereeing. When you see, I think even, was it Zenit's English Twitter even retweeted something along the lines where in the very same night, in a different game, there was a retake, a penalty taken, and the players were encroaching and it wasn't retaken. So it's just, I can see why they're aggrieved from the inconsistencies. But Juve's class was just far beyond on the night. And I say Juve, it was Pablo Dybala show. He was absolutely incredible. Assisted the last goal for Morata, which was a really nice move. So it's good to see Zenit performing better in what is a very tough group, with the pressure off, because look, 3rd is what you would expect them to do in this group. It's pretty cruel to have the champions of Europe and Juve both in the same one. But if we do move on to the Europa League, Loco again with got a 1-1 draw away to Galatasaray in isolation. Arguably not the greatest, not the worst result. Konstantin Maradashvili got the assist on Francois Kamano's goal with a really nice cross. I think Maradashvili was probably Loco's best player on the night in general. With a real accomplished performance in midfield, especially when Alexis Bakar alongside him did struggle and was largely anonymous compared to Maradashvili's influence upon the game. Loco again it was actually quite a narrow match, this one, but Loco I think had showed more quality in the ball. For Galatasaray only had 1 shot on target, and they scored because Guilherme is in goal, but it was Sofiane Feghouli. But it's again, every time I see Loco play this year, it just feels like a missed opportunity. It's that home form, losing to Galatasaray at home earlier on in the competition was And then the draw with Marseille, it's just in isolation, getting the point away in Istanbul is no mean feat. It's a horrible place to go. It was a decent-ish performance from some of the players, but I just feel, I don't know about you, David, but I just feel every time I see Loco play in Europe this season, I'm just underwhelmed, and I'm expecting more. I'm expecting some of the bigger players to step up. Before passing on to yourself, it's wise to mention that Tino Anjorin, on loan from Chelsea, is actually returned to his parent club with an injury. And even though Loco have a deal in place to potentially sign Anjorin for just under 20 million euros, can't really imagine that's going to go ahead with his kind of stop-start form, lack of real impact, and now return due to injury. But David, what do you think about Loco's European performances more in general, as well as just on Thursday night?
Yeah, it's been a real disappointment, especially after last year. Last season they were against the big teams. Obviously they had an incredibly difficult group with Bayern Munich, wasn't it? Atletico Madrid and was it Leipzig or Salzburg? Salzburg, wasn't it?
Salzburg, yeah.
Team. So you had three very difficult teams, and they put on a really good set of performances. Obviously, they still came last, but they didn't come last embarrassingly. The worst performance was arguably the second Salzburg game, as I recall. Mm-hmm. The games against the big boys, they really knuckled down and defended really well, scored on counter-attacks, and could go away with some pride, even though they lost, I think, a couple of those games very narrowly. They still put in a good effort. But this year, when I think of the Lazio away game, it was dreadful. Marseille dominated them in Moscow, and Loco were lucky to get their equaliser through Anjorin. And then Galatasaray, last time out again in Moscow, it was such a flat performance. Like there was just nothing for going on for them up top. I know they've been suffering with injuries of late, and Smolov hasn't been in the squad recently. He was only on the bench this week, but their managerial changes have just sort of left them in this tactical limbo where they're sort of just on the pitch, but they seem to have no real plan. But I can't just put that on that because obviously they've started with Nikolic and things weren't going well with Nikolic, and we talked about their huge squad changes and things like that. All the stuff that's been going on there, the behind the scenes drama. It's been an unsettled season at Loco for sure. But the performances in Europe have been far less respectable than last season, which is a surprise because at the start of the year they were the team who I thought had the best chance of doing well. Based on the evidence that we had from last year, they were my pick to be quote unquote the best performing Russian team, and they've arguably been the worst.
Yeah, certainly. Especially like you say, it's one of the main barometers you get from these European sides who play year in, year out is the comparisons to the year prior, whether or not the team as a unit have made strides forwards. It's obviously a little bit more difficult with Lokomotiv because they had quite a upheaval in the summer. But when we discuss Zenit and their step forwards, where it's largely the same core, it's a manager who's learning his trade at this level. It's a team that's been improved upon with this core of Brazilians who are really running in their stride both domestically and in Europe and kicking the team on, hopefully, to the next level. Comparatively, it's not huge progress, but it's just slowly but surely getting better every year for Zenit under Semak in Europe. Well, from last year anyway. And then Loco, because like you said, Dave, because of the upheaval off the pitch, it's kind of just been a little bit of a reset for them, losing big players, experienced players who were influential characters in the dressing room, even if not as influential on the pitch anymore. So it's been just very stagnant, I think is probably a good word for it. Some good performances in there, the odd little sort of light at the end of the tunnel, but largely it's more of the same of a team who usually defend fine, but offer very little going forwards and are nowhere near, are far too profligate to make any impact against a stronger, sterner, meaner defence. But if we do now move on to the last European game, and that is, of course, Spartak's 1-1 draw with Leicester. Just to quickly go through some of the stats. Leicester had 77% possession, completed 811 passes. 90% of these were accurate. Yet only 57 long balls, which is the same as Spartak, who completed that, like I said, that 57 long balls from only 245 attempted passes. They had one shot on target, Spartak all game, from 23% possession. So it's just to quickly summarise, that is obvious of what Rui Vitoria's approach was during this game. It was to pack the defence, go along, over the top, use Promes's pace and Sobolev's height and target man ability back to goal to try and disrupt Leicester's defence and just to keep it compact and not suffer the ignominy of the 7-1 and the 4-3 defeats of recent times. He made a few changes. Nikolai Raskazov, obviously, who was heavily embarrassed after the last few games, was not in the team. He was at fault for arguably all 4 of Leicester's goals in the reverse leg. And in particular, Sanya Selikov returned in goal and Misha Ignatov in attacking midfield. Now, Sanya Selikov is going through a little bit of a potential resurgence at the minute. He had an excellent game. Has started the last 2 since Maximenko was dropped after the 7-1 defeat. Almost kept a clean sheet in the last match against Rostov, only to be denied that by a 95th minute goal from Daniil Glebov to make it 1-1. Performed okay in that game, wasn't necessarily that busy. It was one of those where Spartak generally dominate possession, dominate territory, and then Rostov, I think, only had 2 shots on target. But the goal, there was nothing you could blame on Salikov's side, in my opinion. Leicester, however, was a totally different story. He was busy all night. Because Spartak was so tight, so compact, and actually very good defensively in a nice change, he didn't face a huge amount of saves. He wasn't forced to make a huge amount of saves, only 2 or 3 on the night. But he just looked very commanding. He looked comfortable, I think is probably the easiest thing to say. And of course, did save a Jamie Vardy penalty, which was maybe because the penalty was terrible, not just Sanya Selikov's save, but always credit the goalkeeper. David, are you glad to see Spartak take a different approach instead of just trying to match up Leicester, trying to match up Zenit when they're clearly nowhere near as good?
Well, I think it's proven that he's not insane. Because what's the old adage? If you keep trying the same thing, I can't remember. I'm not being very poetic here. It's early and I've not long been up. But the old adage, you try the same thing over and over again. It's the definition of insanity. So at least he changed something. Thank God Raskazov didn't play. It was a lineup that actually you could sort of be half proud of. There were no players there who. Okay, that's maybe a bit too far, but they're unlike Raskazov or Lomovitsky, who are 2 passengers of the limit. There was not maybe any players in there who thought he's been there just for the limit. Ignatov is young and he's been impressing, so it was fine to see him start, and they did what they did really well. After the not the heartbreak, but the ignominy of losing, having been 2-0 up at home against Leicester. They did well to shut them out. All I saw very brief glimpses of the game, and in the glimpses that I saw Sumari bashed the crossbar from about 40 yards out, or however far out that was, with a ridiculous shot. And I saw Spartak's goal, which was just a very well executed counter attack. A point isn't hugely helpful, and obviously, if they could have come away with the 3, it would have been an unbelievable result. Obviously, Legia's form in the league or in that table has sort of thrown a spanner in the works. But as I recall, even if they can somehow come third, they'll still go into the Conference League, as I recall, or they have a chance of going to Conference League. So, it was a good result for them. Pleased to see that they changed something up. Got rid of some of the passengers who've been in the team, and now we have to just hope they can go to Warsaw and get a result without seeing the table in front of me. I'm assuming a win in Warsaw would probably be enough to get in third place, minimum.
Yeah, well, Spartak are bottom of the group still with only 4 points, but are now still within 3 points of Napoli in first because of, like you said, the results in it. Legia won both their first 2 games, but then their form kind of nosedived since then. They've lost 4-1 to Napoli and 3-0 to Napoli as well, yet Spartak managed to get 3 points in Napoli. So it's very much still alive, the group now. And it's probably going to go down to that one game with Legia. Legia have got Leicester away, if I remember rightly. I'm sure they played at home. They play Leicester at home in the first half of the group. So it's very much in Spartak's hands. And I agree, it was nice to see, like you said, the passengers taken out of the Spartak side. There's, every now and again you see Spartak and you think, oh, they'll have a decent first team. And then they'll get one injury and then you're stuck with like a Yeshenka or a Raskasov or a Kutupov in defence because of Maslov's injury. Or because of injuries further up the pitch, then Georgi Melkadze might get a start or Alexander Lomovitsky might get a start. And it's just, these players are probably fine domestically the weekend after a European match, but you really don't want any of them starting when you're playing Leicester away with the talent that they have throughout the side. So it was good to see Maximiliano Corfrier play very well. He's been under fire a lot for Spartak this season, but as probably rightfully so, he's been a little bit out of his depth at times. But on the night, he was Spartak's best defender, in my opinion. I think it was 10 clearances, 2 blocks, 2 interceptions, 2 tackles. Leicester tried again to take advantage of Spartak's right-hand side. A lot of their play was focused around recycling the ball up through Tielemans, through a Jose Perez, who would peel off onto the left. Bertrand getting out wide, and in Iheanacho this time, peeling off in behind, because Patson Daka was pretty much anonymous, had a terrible game. And that was because Daka's game is all in behind. It's all balls over the top, playing on the shoulder, playing off the last man. But Spartak was so deep in response to the way that they were open at the match of the Krylia that Daka just had nowhere to go. Bertrand was poor. Iheanacho was stifled. And Moses and Corfrier down that right-hand side were both really solid in defence and Spartak's best outlet in attack. Moses' goal was probably fortuitous. Don't get me wrong, it was a nice move. The cross from Ignatov was excellent. The way that he got to the byline, picked his man, and it was a perfect whipped cross just far away from the defenders. It's really difficult to deal with when they're alert. But the lucky side of it is that Leicester's defence was just not alert whatsoever. Sumare just let him, and Namate just let him through. Soyuncu and Evans were nowhere near. It was all over the place. It was weird to see that Moses was just allowed to run from midway in his own half right to the edge of the Leicester 10 yards or so of the goal. Totally unmarked. Good move, good header, really nice cross, but it was certainly unavoidable from Leicester, and I think that was maybe lack of concentration because they were in the ascendancy for the entirety of the game. That was Spartak's one and only shot on target. So they've only got themselves to blame, and Spartak kept those concentration levels up for the most part. The goal again was a little bit disappointing. Amate just totally free in the back post, but it was a deflection onto him. So I'll give Spartak a little bit of leeway on that, because they've went to Leicester, got a result, and have put themselves into a position where they can hopefully go to Legia and get third place in the group, move into the next stage of the competition, even if it is dropping down to the Conference League, which would be an improvement. As a quick summary, the guys at Swiss Football Data, and that's at Swiss Foot Data on Twitter, go through a ranking of coefficients, and they look at the coefficients on a weekly basis, and the country rankings analyze it country via country. In terms of Russia, we've had a plus 0.4 to the coefficients as a result of Loko's away draw and Spartak's away draw. But they analyse that when does the nightmare end, because there was no victory again this week. Zenit lost 2-4 against Juve, and Loko and Spartak with draws. The top 11 still in danger, and things look even more grim for next season. Now, in isolation, again, these results away from home aren't necessarily the worst. Zenit are playing Juve, Loko and Spartak away from home got points in difficult games. The problem is when you don't take it outside of isolation, and you only claimed 0.4 points this week, gained 0.4 points this week, which is 20th, and the biggest gainers of the week list, behind Slovakia, Cyprus, Croatia, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Belgium, Turkey, Scotland, Azerbaijan, and Israel. They all gained more points this week in terms of the coefficients. It's not that long ago when we were looking at Russia actually catching up to France in 5th. France are now on 50 coefficient points. Russia are way back now. They're back on 32. And the why this is a problem is when you look at the access list for 2022-23-24 season. The current access list is that Russia are in 10th in the coefficients, dropped behind Scotland, Austria, and Netherlands this season since the last one. That means that they're currently looking at having 5 teams. The champion would go straight through the Champions League group stages, and then teams 2, 3, and 4 to the Champions League second qualifying round, Conference League third qualifying round, and Conference League second qualifying round, respectively, and the cup winners straight in the Europa League playoffs. Not necessarily terrible. Of course, if they were still 6th, they would have 6 teams, with the cup winners going straight into the group stages and first and second going straight into the group stages of the relevant competitions. The problem is that if Russia drops any further, bearing in mind, like I said, Switzerland, Belgium, Serbia, Ukraine, Croatia, Czech Republic, Cyprus, Turkey, Greece have all gained this week. If they continue to gain on a week-by-week basis, Russia drops out of the top 10. When you drop out of the top 10, you no longer get a club automatically in the group stages. That's huge. If you drop out even further, drop down to the third, 3 places, and that's all it would take, 3 places, 5 points. You don't get anyone automatically into the Champions League playoffs anymore. It's only in the qualifiers. You don't get anyone in the Europa League playoffs anymore. Everyone would have to play from the qualifiers from the second round onwards, or third if you win the league. So this is seriously possible that Russia could drop from 10th to 13th. It's very close if you look at the coefficient tables. In 10th, Russia are on, as I said before, 32.08. Belgium are only on 29.2. Belgium gained on Russia this week again. The gap is getting big, is smaller and smaller. The gap to 11th place was minus 2.2 just this week. Belgium have got 4 teams remaining. Ukraine have got 3 teams remaining. Russia's still only got 3 as well. Austria have got 4 teams remaining. It's worrying in terms of the coefficient points, and even though, like I say again, this was not the worst week in terms of results in isolation, but again, it's a week without a victory. It's a week where you see individual errors are really costing Russian sides. And if it continues like this, the current projection is that Russia could be 13th or 14th by the end of the season, which is pretty much disastrous in terms of the coefficients. So again, that's just a quick summary I wanted to go through, and that's from the fellas at Swiss Football Data. I really do recommend it. They don't just look at the tables and put them online. Their analysis is really in depth, and it's long-term analytics as well, looking at from a purely statistical point of view of the trends of where each country go from a result basis. Highly recommend it. But we do have some international action coming up soon. Myself and Richard, explored our thoughts on the massive 41-man squad for Valery Karpin last week. That has now been reduced to 30 with 11 omissions from the full initial squad. But before quickly looking through the omissions, David, what do you think of the 41-man squad?
Depending on how that question, what do I think of the composition, or what do I think of the prospect of it? The prospect of a 41-man squad, or the reality of it, is it's ridiculous. We like that Karpin is giving chances to players who are getting in based on form, or younger players, players who actually deserve to be there. But he's taken that prop that we've given him and gone way too far with it. 41 players is just frankly ridiculous. Like, if you had a national pool of players who could or have a chance of getting in the squad, you're probably looking at nothing more than like 60 or 70 players, probably at most, with realistic chances of currently getting in the squad. And as we've said already, the fact that they've currently called up 54 in total is just outrageous. He's got 10 different goalkeepers. And I just don't see the point. He names his squad so early, right? Last week, so still a week before, technically, that he needs to. And before they've even had a chance to get together and start training, he cuts however many players from the squad, 11 players. It's just pointless. Like, if you're going to name a big squad, the purpose of it, when these things usually happen, like, not necessarily to 41, but sometimes national teams do name slightly larger squads with a couple of extra players, because the coaches want to observe those players, right, in training and see how they get on. I just don't see the point in naming 41 players only for a week later to just name 30 of them. Just wait a week and then name the 30. It's like, maybe he's done it for morale. He wants to say to players like Chernikov and Meredishvili or whoever, that you're in our thoughts. But you don't actually have to name them in the squad. You could actually just say, we're keeping an eye. Just send them a message saying that you're doing really well. You're not in the squad this time, but we're keeping an eye on you. Whatever. Very, very peculiar. The squad itself, composition, I was fairly happy with. There was a lot of players there who deserved to be there on form. Obviously, a lot of those have since been cut, but they're still, the squad is still decent on paper, and it's some big fixtures that they've got to go and have. They have to beat Cyprus, assuming that Croatia are going to go and win their game against, I think, Malta, is it? I forget. And then they're going to have to, the big game is the Croatia game. And as I recall, because of Croatia's result against Slovakia, a draw should be enough. And that's a huge game. The only thing I was a bit disappointed was that he stuck with Agalarov. Oh no, he dropped Agalarov, who's obviously still RPL top scorer. Whether he was just not impressed with him during the last training camp. Obviously, Agalarov didn't play in either of those two last fixtures. But, Smoller's been injured and barely playing. Zabolotny's been on average form. And I can't even remember who the other striker is. Who is it? Let me pull up the list. Sergeyev. Okay, Sergeyev. Sergeyev's something different. So I can't be too upset with that, but he's also untested. Like, he's had Agalarov in the squad and dropped him from previous time. So he's obviously decided. I don't know, because I seem to recall he called him up and he said, we need to see what he's like in training. So maybe they weren't impressed with him enough in training. The comment I do remember him saying was that he really liked how he puts himself about. He has some of the most, some of the highest attacking duels of anyone in the RPL. He just will chuck himself at anything. So yeah, the squad was good. Other than that, I thought Galarov deserved. He's keeping up his goal scoring run. Why shouldn't he be in? But yeah, the squad's fine, but the manner of him doing it, I can still look past Kudryashov and maybe a little bit, I suppose. When the squad is largely made up of other players who I do like. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to sit too long on last week on the composition itself, because I did look over that last week, but it was 11 players dropped, as you mentioned, David. That includes Gamida Galarov. Most of the players who were dropped tended to be youngsters. Adamov, Klugovoy, Agalarov included in that, Konstantin Chukavin, Alexander Chernikov, and others. Most of them have actually dropped down to the under-21 squad. Now, I'll finish off. I just wanted to quickly explore that it has actually been dropped down, but by reading out a quick response to the original tweet from @Team Russia, Sponaya Rossi. And it's one of the fans says, Gadia Galarov Suka, which is, yeah. I'll not get into that, but absolutely, where the hell is Galarov? Why is he not in that squad? I don't care if other people think that maybe Smolov is a better option, or Zabolotny, or Sergeyev right now. Obviously, he likes his big men up top. Sobolev's been a little bit out of form of late. Sergeyev could be an option alongside Zabolotny for that target man to try and look to replace Zuba. But why not call it Bagalarov? He's got 4 goalkeepers in there. He's not going to play all 4 goalkeepers. Drop a keeper, bring in Agalarov, get him in the training, get him in the matches, even just late on. Get him playing. The form that he's in right now, he 100% deserves it. It's ridiculous that he's not there. So I agree, whoever that was, in the replies to the initial tweet of the squad. Where is Agalarov? But I just wanted to quickly explore that before finishing off on the RPL. So last weekend, there was a full fixture list of regular RPL matches in round 13. I'll quickly review all of the results before moving on to yourself, David, to summarise a few of them. Zenit beat Dynamo 4-1 in the top of the table clash. Rubin 1, CSKA 0. Spartak 1, Rostov 1. Krasnodar 0, Krylia 1. And that was just after... and since then, Igor Osinkin has been voted by the fans and by the public as the RPL Manager of the Month for October. Nizhny 1, Loko 2. Ufa 1, Akhmat 0. Arsenal 1, Sochi 2. And Himki 0, Ural 0. So, David, do you want to start with Rubin CSKA?
Yeah, a rare bright note for Rubin of late. First win in 5 games. Still without Despot. Despot's out injured, so Onuk has been playing as the striker. We were also without Aremovic last week, which I was very confused when I saw the lineup. I didn't know how we were going. I thought originally that Bakayev was going to be playing right wing, but we ended up with Drea was... no, who was playing centrally? Haksabanovic, I think, was in centre mid alongside Hwang Inbom. Abul Ghor was centre half alongside Talbi. And then Bakayev was right wing, Drea centre, Kvaratskhelia on the left. Yeah, it was a very even game. I think percentage wise and shot wise, it was almost exactly even. Both teams had chances. There was nothing hugely clear cut, but it was certainly an improved performance from us. And we fought on hard, and we got a very late winner from Kostyukov. In a bit of gets a lot of stick because he's an average player who can sort of fill in averagely in a lot of positions. But he came on It was a really fantastic cross from Haksabanovic, which all Kostyakov had to do was just run onto it and smash it in with his head, which he did. So yeah, it was good to finally get another win, get moving up the table. Still a lot to do. I'm very pleased that Shatov's back in training. We've really missed him, I think, personally, his creativity. Just having him in the team allows Hwang to play in a slightly freer role. Because at the moment, Hwang's being forced to be sort of the conduit between defence and attack, as well as the creator in attack. So he's got to carry the ball out and then be the creator in the advanced section of the field. Really, we'd like him to be the conduit and Shatov to be the one higher up creating the chances. So yeah, I'm hoping that he can get back in the team soon. But yeah, an important win, and we've got a tough game against Rostov this weekend, who are sort of on shaky. You can't really predict what Rostov are going to do at the moment. You know, and in general, they're on terrible form this season, but they've looked like they could throw up some surprise results. So, and we've got a historically poor record there, so I'm hoping we can get something. But very pleased to get a win.
Yeah, much needed after that long run of poor form. I kept an eye on Arsenal Sochi. Again, I wanted to focus on both of these sides. I've been trying to focus a little bit on Arsenal's game, as I've mentioned since excuse me, Miodrag Bozovic came into the club. They actually lost again. Kings Kangwa was probably Arsenal's man of the match. Despite the 2-1 loss, he was really good in the middle, completed more touches and more passes than Kostadinov and Ceausescu combined. Dictated things in the middle when Arsenal were actually on the ball, and they dominated possession this against Sochi, which you haven't seen as much for Sochi against Sochi this season. He got an assist with a really nice cross into Evans Kangwa, who somehow won a header. Probably the first time I've ever seen Evans Kangwa win a header, but it was just one of those nice little goals where you see like a wing backs combine, that sort of thing, where it was good to see two brothers combining to get Arsenal back in the game. That was at 1-1. Sochi, their first goal, literally 2 minutes into the game, was absolutely wonderful football. It was proper what you would expect of Sochi, where they progress at pace, playing real fast-paced one-touch football. Noboa got the assist for Cassiera to score again, who's been in excellent form this season. Cassiera in general, I think that's 6 goals and assists in 7 games for Sochi. But although I did praise Kangwa for the rest of his game, he started a little bit slow. It was actually when Sochi were progressing with the ball, I think it was some nice link-up play from Proc and Margasov and Jarzinho on the right-hand side. Before Noboa was released through the middle to run on his own, he was level with Kings Kangwa, and Kings just didn't track the runner, didn't see the danger. So he's obviously still young, a little bit to learn there. And Noboa, obviously miles ahead of most people on most pitches that he plays on, read the game really well and got the assist for Cassiera. And then Cassiera finished the scoring late on with another goal. A real solid Sochi performance. And while I don't like how the club was founded in the first place, obviously the franchise move of shifting Dynamo St. Petersburg down south, you just can't help but watch and appreciate some of the football that they play with the tools that they have at their disposal. Still third in the league. Played in European football for the first time in the history of the season, of course, earlier on in the season. And even then, missing some key players. Dmitry Vorobyov has been out for quite some time, injured. Marko Djukancic has also been out quite a bit injured. Sozlan Zhanayev, their first choice goalkeeper, was missing at the weekend, missing again today. Nikolai Zabolotny's been deputising for him. And in spite of that, just playing really good stuff, and have found in Cassiera what they've desperately needed for the last couple of seasons so far anyway, early on, is that real clinical player who doesn't get involved too much in the game, but is ready to strike when he needs to be. He's always finding space in the box. He's really nice at ghosting in behind, really good at that. Not necessarily the best finisher, but his movement gets him there to where he doesn't need to force himself to put it like top bins or something or find a corner because his movement's so good. Really, really nice to watch him ghosting in behind. David, what else caught your eye? Krasnodar, Krylia? I know you quite like a surprise.
Yeah, so I watched that game. It was on at the same time as Loko Nizhny, which I was trying to keep an eye on both. Main thing to notice was another error in defence for the goal. I don't know what Sergei Petrov was doing, to be honest. It was all his fault. Safonov took a short goal kick. Petrov played it straight back to Safonov. Safonov gave it straight back to Petrov again. And Petrov decided, no, you can have it back against Safonov, but scuffed his passes completely. I just don't know why he wouldn't take the ball and move it forward. He had room the first time to take it on. The second time, the opposition player was a bit closer, but there still was an out ball to someone on the right wing. And he didn't take it, and Krylia had a tap in because of it. Savelli scored again. He's been on a little streak of form recently, scoring quite a few goals. Then after that, it was just one-way traffic from Krasnodar, but they couldn't break through. They had some good chances, combination of some good saves and some just bad misses. Krylia could have killed the game late on as well. They had a big counter, I remember, very late on through Penyaev and I think it was Yezhov, maybe. Anyway, two of them went away and they ballsed it up. Penyaev played actually a very good ball across. Just turned 17, by the way. It feels like yesterday we were talking about him as like a 14 or 15-year-old who was like going viral. But yeah, he played a great ball across, and the Krylia attacker who was going through, I think it was Yezhov, but he messed up. He should have killed the game there. But Krylia have been on good form. They're up in mid-table. They're above both Spartak and Rubin at the moment, I believe. So going well, and Krasnodar, so hard to predict of late. They've some weeks you think, wow, they're really starting to look good again, and other weeks they're like, oh, this is back to old Krasnodar again. But they're still they're sixth. They're having a much better season in general. The addition of Cordoba has helped, even though he's a bit shaky himself of late. And still, obviously, areas to improve greatly. Obviously, the defence being one of them. But doing better, just not very consistent at the moment at all. Obviously, they lost 3-0 in the Cup to Kuban in the Krasnodar derby, which was embarrassing considering Kuban have been in one of the worst teams in the FNL this season for the most part. And that was a fairly strong team they put out too. Krylia good, Krasnodar not so much. They're actually right next to each other in the table right now.
Rubin sandwich.
Well, Rubin just below them. Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh.
Some for whatever, I don't know what it is. Head to head. Yeah, because we drew with Krylia, or did we? Did we lose to Krylia? I forget. We have played Krylia.
I have them here as 6th, 7th, and 8th with Rubin 7th. But this website is terrible.
I'm on the RPL website, so I'm going to trust what I've got.
Right. I'll finish off with Zenit Dynamo. I didn't want to mention any of the teams who played midweek in this section because we mentioned them earlier, but I think it would be remiss to not discuss the game that took place at the top of the table when first placed second. Dynamo are now down to 5th, such as how close everybody else who isn't Zenit is together up there. Zenit again showing their absolute class. The South American contingent, again, absolutely brilliant. This time without Douglas Santos. It was Vyacheslav Karavayev fulfilled his duties at left wing back. Santos, of course, was missing through injury. But Wendell and Claudinho, absolutely brilliant again. Both scored. Not the greatest of goals. Claudinho really taking advantage of a dreadful mistake by Ivan Ordetz. Later on in the game, Wendell just really nice finish into the bottom corner, taking advantage again of just the gulf in class. Dynamo, for most of the first 60 minutes, give or take, were pretty good at matching Zenit up. It was just that one mistake early in the game that let Claudinho get in to score. Handball was given against Karavayev, who had a poor game in deputising for Santos. Daniel Fomin, real nice penalty again, one of the best penalty takers in Russia, levelled things up. And then Zuba came on, acted as a battering ram. I mean, I don't mean that to disparage Zuba at all. We all know what he's like when he's got his back to goal. He's just brilliant. And really, really just pushed Dynamo back, occupied Balbuena and Ordetz far more. Obviously, the team they themselves were pushed back and gave Wendell in particular room to make things happen. Zuba scored just before the 70th minute to go now level on his own, out clear on his own as the highest goal scorer in RPL history. And then Yaroslav Rakitsky finished it off 4-1. Again, absolute gulf in class. Dynamo were far better than Spartak, far more organised, disciplined, gave a better shove of it, a better game of it. Nicola Morrow was actually quite good in midfield for Dynamo. Denis Makarov on the right was an important outlet in counter-attacking. It was him who forced the handball from Karavayev for the penalty in the first place. But again, just certain aspects of Zenit's team are just way beyond anybody else's class at this level. And this one was a real spine of the team job. Of late, you've seen Santos and Sutomen out wide and Mostovoy taking advantage out wide of players with this new formation. But it was Wendell, Barrios, and Claudinho who had a free role in the middle who dominated the game and got the victory for Zenit. And again, just a class of their own. And that's why, although we're only 13 games into the season, Zenit are already 5 points clear of anybody else. And then that 5 points back, you've got a spate of 5 teams or so who are only within 3 points of each other. So I think anybody not betting on the league to be Zenit this year is absolutely wild at this stage, barring unforeseen circumstances. But with that, we've come to the end of this week's podcast. Just to quickly finish, there's been some weird stories as a quick news roundup this week. Olga Smodskaya called Spartak a racist institution. Spartak have then released a statement that they, and I quote, "do not disregard the words of Smodskaya, but it is a serious accusation for which they will have to answer within the framework of the law." Yeah. Smodskaya then attacked back, being like, why does it need that reaction? All I said that racism is bad. And it's just a little bit of a crazy one where it's twofold. Spartak potentially taking Olga Smodskaya to court is just a weird headline. And even weirder, actually agreeing with Olga Smodskaya, her actually talking sense for probably the first time since her involvement in Russian football. For those who may not know, she was the former CEO of Lokomotiv and is pretty much widely hated by the entirety of the Lokomotiv fan base. Secondly, this week, there was an interview on Championat with the Italian agent Marco Tribucci. He was, don't know if he still is, but was Massimo Carrera's agent during his time at Spartak, still is Roman Yaremyanka's agent, and has worked directly with Spartak and other clubs in Russia over the years. He claims that Spartak have been actively looking to replace Rui Vitoria. Now, it must be noted that every single word that comes out of his mouth in this interview needs to be taken with a huge pinch of salt, considering he is a football agent. Some of his clients are football managers. So, of course, he's going to be saying things like that because it benefits him. But just a little bit of an interesting tidbit is that he also claims that Roman Yaremyanka has been unfairly treated and deserves another chance in football in Russia. I mean, one could say unfairly treated, the other could say ostracized for his own idiocy and what he did with the recreational drugs 4 years ago. But hey, that's another story. But that's been it this week for the Russian Football News podcast. If you do keep an eye on the RPL fixtures this weekend, we're currently, at the time of recording, it's half-time in Arsenal versus Ufa. It's currently 0-0. Elsewhere, Dynamo Krasnodar, Krylia Himki, Sochi CSKA, Ural Zenit, Rostov Rubin, Akhmat Nizhny, and Spartak Lokomotiv in another Moscow derby. But this has been the Russian Football News podcast. Goodbye for now.
Идет футбольный матч, летит над полем мяч. Веди его, беги, точнее его ударь. Но мяч берет с ноги решительный вратарь. Не напрасно футбольное поле самых ловких и смелых влечет. Здесь нужны тренировка и воля, быстрота, увлечение, расчет.